Hannah. Thank you, Selena, once again. So we are now being joined in this technology ecosystem and Mac Alliance from Stories from the Block Tailored for Technology panel by Christopher from commercetools, who was with us earlier today, Tim from Profound, who just jumped from the other conversation, and I want to give the opportunity to Chris from Netlify to warm up his voice, because question number 1 will go to him afterward. Chris, the floor is yours.
Very nice to meet everyone. I'm Chris Bach, Christian Bach, Chris for short, co-founder, CSO and CEO of Netlify, developer platform that used to tie together all those wonderful Mac solutions where you have all these different modules, best-in-class components that can then meet a viable workflow and orchestration platform, developer workflow for deployment and distribution, and connecting everything, and that's what Netlify sort of does. So that's what we do. I also sit on the board of the Mac Alliance.
Thank you very much for that quick intro, Chris. And because the threat was real, the first question for today's panel goes to you. What series of events led to the birth of the Mac concept? And actually, there's a second part to that. How does it differentiate from other terms such as composable, Jamstack, decoupled, and the list can go on and on?
Yeah, I think like all those terms are slightly different, but all center around this move of legacy monoliths, right, for the web. And I think this started around 10 years ago, right, where you saw the very first sort of headless solutions for commerce and content management and so on, right, where essentially the front end and the back end had been decoupled. But it was super nascent and there wasn't talk about a space yet. And so we at Netlify we're sort of seeing, hey, this is a better way to build for the web. Like if you separate your building from your hosting, you're going to get something that's infinitely more scalable. And, you can get something that's much more performant. And there was a lot of good reasons for that, because you no longer had that single point of origin, huge monolith that had to do everything. Now you could use just what you wanted best in class, and then you could have multiple points of origin, right? Because the entire site could be pre-built and live on edge nodes all over the world, and then you would use the browser more as a runtime. And I think that we came out trying to provide a working platform for that, which in the beginning very much focused on developers. I think any sort of tech ecosystem starts in the very developer bottom-up fashion, right, where you very much focus on tech and not on use cases, right? So it's more sort of what's the technological enablement here. And I think that sort of was growing ever more, right? And today it's obviously huge, right? At Netlify, we have more than 3 million developers and businesses on the platform. We add more than 100,000 every month, and are really starting to see this take off. But I also think that we're crossing a chasm, right, from niche and growth into maturing market, and I think in that there's a lot more enterprises that are moving looking to move to what we call composable architecture, right? So this decoupled approach. To a large extent, not just for smaller projects. And I think there we start seeing ecosystem coalesce more around use cases, right? More around guidance for these enterprises in this emerging composable landscape, right? And I think that's where Mac Alliance has done a wonderful job, right? In coalescing and around these use cases, right? Focusing primarily in commerce, but growing from there, right? And I think that there's that's why we're seeing this traction, is because it's technologically now viable to prioritize coming to a composable architecture even at larger scale, right? And then when it comes to the different terminologies, I think Jamstack was something that we helped originate, right? Which dealt very much around the best practices of tying these things together, right? So like, how would this work? Like, it's not just enough to have a headless CMS if everything else is a monolith, right? So what are the best practices of how it's working and how it's served as the best web experiences? And I think, decouple and headless was used more interchangeable. It was more sort of in the beginning around having a monolith, but cutting out the front end, but keeping it. And I think composable is more taking the next step of saying, hey, let's make sure that all the parts are composable and it's not just a monolith with a separated front end. Mac, of course, microservice APIs and cloud and headless. And I heard the last talks, I know we talked about this quite a bit, right? But I think it's even more prescriptive of saying it's not just using APIs and microservices, but what should they look like? They should be multi-tenant and SaaS, and providing more of a framework that can guide us as decisions made by enterprises as they invest in this, and for the enterprise architects to really sort of wrap around what are the best practices there. And so all of this has to do with we're much better off moving off the legacy monoliths. They were great in the beginning. They were necessary in the beginning. Now we have a booming API economy. There's several places for the runtime, but even more important, I think we're at a place where there's just so many channels, right? There's so much that monolith has to do. And in order to embrace that, they've become quite bloated and best in class at nothing, right? And so the price you're paying staying on a monolith today is, in the beginning, it was sort of, oh, you might be able to get an edge by experimenting with these new technologies. And I think it's happened so fast that today we're at a place where if you don't, you're at a decidedly disadvantage, competitively speaking, right? You sort of have to now embrace the technology if you want to keep with the pack. So, yeah.
So it's the next step in the evolution of technology. You have the choice of keeping up with it, or
yeah, I think like when we talk to web technology and the technology behind it as well, and that sort of software development, we see gradual development, right, all the time. And then you see these shifts. And I think from on-prem to cloud was a big shift, right? And I think this embrace of composable architecture now, saying let's move off the web monoliths, that's a shift, right? It's happening very, very fast because there's so many advantages tied to it. And because we live in a world where most businesses, their problems have digital solutions, right? So time to market becomes essential. And so investing in these things becomes something that's not just a nice to have, it's not adjacent, you're not optimizing something on the side of your business. This is it, this is key, this is core.
Thank you very much for that answer, Chris. Christopher, I think this next question should go to you as one of the founding fathers of the Mac Alliance. What are the goals of the Alliance today, and what is the actual value that it brings to the industry? I think you're on mute.
Okay. Well, now we'll say founders of the Mach Alliance. I was not part of that. I've only been with the company about a year.
Not you per se, but the company,
right. Yeah. So what I would say is when I talk to my partners about this, it may not be the formal mission statement, but I view it as simply it eliminates the fear and the friction associated with adopting a composable commerce or composable technology, and in that sense. It builds on the innovations in open source and community. So this was a group of like-minded members of this technology community, and they looked to establish an industry standard definition of Mach, and then basically objectively certify against it. You know, we have UL listing for safety in the U.S. You have different organic certifications that farmers and growers use to basically state our community sets these objective standards and we deliver against them. So that's the first piece. And then, you know, obviously they want to build an awareness of the technology and the ecosystem. This is evangelism. This is making folks aware of all the things that Chris said, the value of it, of the technology. And there is a parallel structure here. There's great technical piece, but it also then translates into, you know, really competitive business advantage. And that two pieces, you need to have your evangelist out there in the marketplace. And in the previous presentation, you saw some of the folks in the industry. Tim is one of them as well, who has participated. And it's not just the software providers, it's the cloud hosters, it's folks like Netlify, which we use as part of our in delivery of products to clients. And it's all of the agencies and the SIs who work with it. And so the final thing is, you know, also to be a business and technical resource, you know, so you set the standards, you get the community agreement, but also then you have to propagate the skills and the awareness in the marketplace. So to become a resource for the community, to develop leadership, to develop technologies, certifications, to advocate for the adoption of things like GraphQL and some of the other things that we've done. So it acts like this, community of voluntary evangelical participants who are trying to make the world aware of the value that we bring to the marketplace, while at the same time setting some objective membership standards, along the way to hold to outstanding customer expectations and outcomes.
Thank you. I guess it's similar to when you go to, and you kind of made this analogy as well, you go to the store and you want to buy high quality products. So you check the label and you see that a specific stamp of approval. It's pretty much the same in business with the Mac Alliance approval as well. If you're committed to adopting a certain approach to your tech stack, and if that approach is a Mac approach, then you definitely need to look for that logo on it. Tim, the question for you regarding the Mac Alliance would be, how does an agency such as Profound work with the principles of the Mac Alliance?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing to say is that when we made that choice to only work with technology partners that were part of this Mac movement, our entire engineering team were really excited about that. They wanted to work with this more modern technology approach, and they wanted to be able to define new principles, new ways of engineering that actually aligned very, very, very neatly with the principles of the Mac Alliance. So, getting to work with microservices, with APIs first, and all those kind of things from an engineering point of view made total sense for us. But if we think about it from a business point of view, actually what we're trying to do is to deliver more value faster for our customers with kind of less drama and less stress. So the really important thing I think about working with ecosystems within the Mac Alliance is actually, as an experienced design agency, and we want to just treat the products that we assemble together, the technology products we assemble together, as black boxes. We don't want to be cracking open the hood and tinkering with stuff under the hood there. We want to be, using those technologies for the things that they're designed, they're specialized for, and then combining those with other best-of-breed technologies to get the outcomes we're looking for. We want to take data at source. We don't want to be operationalizing data into caches and things like that. So for us as an agency, the principles of the Mac Alliance actually unshackle us really to do better work at better standards and to control the way that we do things, but do it in a way that enables us, as I say, to bring more value faster to the clients with the work that we're doing. And that's the real kind of advantage for us, I think, with regards to those principles.
It's really great to hear the perspective of an agency and this whole tech stack, because I guess you guys are the ones that do most of the heavy lifting when it comes to understanding the customer pain points and maybe consulting them towards the right solutions for their business. My next question goes back to you, Chris. I hope your voice is no longer rusty anymore.
All good.
Where do you feel like the Mac Alliance is today compared to where it was a few years ago when it first entered the market? And where do you think, what are the possible pitfalls, if there are any, obviously?
Well, I think right now, of course, it's growing very, very fast, right? There's a huge interest from members. There's a lot of fantastic feedback from the users, the enterprises out there, sort of leaning up against Mac Alliance and working with its members. So I think, and it's a great expression of just how quickly the promise of composable is growing, right? I believe Gartner was out there saying 12% of the enterprises said that they would go and use composable, go the composable route if they were building out a new DXP in 2020. And in January 2022, that number was 75%, right? So I think it's also an expression that the market is now really ready, right? This is a better way to build. It's no longer just for developers, right? It's very much something that companies are starting to embrace at scale. And I think the Mac Alliance growth and popularity is very much an expression of that, right? Which is wonderful. And I think, pitfalls can always be there, right? I mean, like when you're dealing with technology, you want to be prescriptive in a certain way because that's putting up guardrails, right? That's leading the path, providing a path and leading the way. And at the same time, right, technology is also constantly evolving. So as any sort of technologically based alliance, you have to be sort of like, hey, what are you out there preaching as being, where you're very rigorous and saying, hey, this is best practice. And I think like that's where we're choosing to talk about like moving off the monoliths and using best in class components and so on. Like that's what we need to take there with us there, right? And then there's some of the best practices that can change on the way, right? And they should be allowed to do that, right? So I think like a pitfall can always be, how prescriptive are you, right? Because if you're not, then it's not, the value sort of goes away. And if you're too prescriptive, then you risk sort of becoming obsolete a little fast, or just sending out signals of confusions as you change your mind, because you have to along the way, right? So that would be my immediate thoughts on that.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, generally speaking, we're all riding a tsunami, right? Like this is already happening at a point of no return. And the reality is that the vast majority still of properties out there are still built on legacy solutions, right? So it's a fun time to be in this space because there's just so much opportunity. And I think like we're really starting to get that broad acceptance that this is a better way. And I say better because it's faster, it's safer, it's cheaper, it's more scalable, right? It is a more cost efficient, right? This is truly a better way to go, right? So.
And I'd echo the tsunami. I was just laughing here. I have spoken with 160 software companies since January 1st interested in being part of our network and composable commerce. So if that's not a tsunami, I don't know what is.
True.
Yeah, I guess it's just a matter of time until you need to step on the wave. Probably there are still businesses that made investments in their current tech stack, even if it's a legacy one, and they kind of want to see all the investment running out, and then they will probably be able to make a switch. And at the same time, I think it's important for us to be there for them now and educate them on the values and what would the benefits be if they make a switch.
Well, the beauty of composable... Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Christopher, go ahead.
I was going to say, because you hit on the beauty of it is you don't have to do a rip and replace. With the monoliths, you have to take everything. So you can say, I've made a large investment, but you know what? I need to address personalization or search or PIM. And you can then incrementally implement a composable approach and bring in the PIM. And then next phase project, this idea of a phase project I talked about earlier in my presentation. That's the beauty of this. It is not an all or nothing, right? No. And as soon as you get on this path, everything can fall into place on your terms, respecting the investment you've made, skills, people, and all of that.
I 1000% agree. But I would also say, further added argument is that I think is really important, especially if we go into times of a bit of a market crunch where people say, well, we're not ready to invest in something new, right? We were thinking what we got. The cost of doing nothing, right? On average, legacy companies on legacy stacks spend 40% of their budgets on upgrades. You get nothing, right? It's just, you just pay for upgrades, right? And your traditional, if you're full legacy, your operational costs are huge. You do all the maintenance yourself. You need a lot more different parts of engineering capability, right? That once you really go through an audit of what it costs to stay put, it very often is not good business at all, right? And then, you couple that to the idea that you don't have to move to a composable architecture and finish the move before you start seeing results, but you can slice out a smaller corner of the projects, use only what the dependables of that area, and then build up and then gradually migrate. I think there's a strong argument to be made that even in crunch times, embarking on composable adventures is the right way to go.
I think there are also a lot of businesses and clients out there that just dread the word replatforming. They've been through so many replatforming cycles over the last decade or so that for them, they have a very clear picture of what that means and how challenging it can be. And I think it's our job to explain that concept that you don't have to eat the elephant all at once. You can do it all in little chunks and build your new enterprise over time, rather than perhaps letting them stay in that mindset that actually, if we're going to change, we have to change everything at once. the key thing that I think we often have to help clients overcome, is that realization that was the old way. In many situations, you don't have to follow that approach. You can do it a bit more gracefully.
Completely agree. And another question for you, Chris. This is because I went to the Mac Alliance's website so many times, and the thing that always caught my attention was the fact that there's a category there named enablers, where Netlify is one of the position fillers. How does that work for you? What does it mean to be an enabler in the Mac Alliance?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we were sort of the inaugural members of the enablers, and I'm glad you asked, right? It's because I think the when you build out with Mac members, right, you can get best-in-class commerce, right? You can get best-in-class continuity, but using those modules themselves, if you couple that to a huge operational spider web of doing everything yourself on a legacy cloud provider, for example, right? Then a lot of the promises that composable architecture sets will not be freed, right? They will not be kept. And so the potential lies, for example, in a much faster time to market, right? And developer workflows that are fantastic. Let's say you have a great way of doing that with your content system and with your commerce system. But if you still have to hand things over for implementation and it takes 4 years or 4 months or whatever before something is live, right? Then those advantages are mute, right? The same goes for performance. Using headless solutions, very often, they are part of solutions that load much faster and get much higher conversion rates because of the speed, but they themselves are sort of enabling that. That's not the delivery. The delivery of that comes from the web experience. So you need to make sure that you're also using the best practices for that part in order to get that super fast time to first byte. And that's really what Netlify provides, is the enabler category, right? So you have on your back end the best way of building out with composable modules, but you need a viable way to tie it all together. You need an orchestration platform, and you need to follow best practices in order to have those sub-second time to first bytes and those effortless sort of, it's not about being better at setting varnish caching. It's about never having to do it again, right? It's about abstracting so much of that operation and turning it into code. And it's when you couple the best-in-class composable modules, solutions on the back end through that workflow that you get true composable architecture, where you actually can free the potential, right, of performance and a bunch of the other things as well, right? So that's the enabler category. We enable Mac solutions to actually be super viable and be best in class and be so fast and be so secure and so scalable and so on, right? So it's part of the possible. I like to say that we're an orchestration platform, right, where developers and companies very easily can come and plug in things like commercetools and Storyblok, right, to create cohesive, great web projects, web applications, websites.
As a follow-up question, but this one would go to Tim. Are agencies, from your perspective, do you think they can be considered enablers for customers or for technology solutions? And Tim, I would really want to hear the perspective from a guy that has an agency and has worked with dozens of projects.
It's probably a pretty uncontroversial view. I think as an agency, we're here to make our clients successful. We have to enable them, and we use technology to enable that success. So it's a bit of a tricumbent of a relationship there. But yeah, ultimately we're here for our clients. We want the best outcomes for them, and it's up to us to find the right mix of technology to achieve those outcomes. And that's how we get. So we enable agencies, and I think technology enables us to enable our agents, to enable our clients.
I certainly second that. The amount of time that we spend developing, we call them accelerators, but they're bundled offerings, led by an SI or an agency with a specific group of 3 to 4 technologies with a demonstrated value prop, whether it's geo or industry. The agencies and the SIs are as valuable to us as our coders are to build our own product, as well as the third-party products we work with. So this is that self-reinforcing or steal Bezos's flywheel idea. We need each other, and then that collaboration builds the creativity that ends up being better solutions for our end clients.
1,000%. Like you
Challenge
also
each other.
incredibly close with agencies, right? And they're a big part of that puzzle, for sure, right? But it's enabling in two different parts of it, right? So slightly different meetings here, right? You still need someone to go in and help with the implementation, and also just to, I think agencies are super interesting, have changed their role, right? To be much more technological advisors, software creators. They'll help their clients even hire developers, right? And 10 years ago when I was in agencies, right, it was a very different game. There was a lot more slogan selling and a lot more, we'll build whatever they want to, right? We're not very opinionated on the technology. And now that's just way too central a part for that to be a viable tactic.
Yeah. And that's a great observation, because that's the big change. We talked about the tech and the Mach versus monoliths, but it's had a huge impact on the channels and the ecosystem, because it used to be, and Tim, you tell me, 10 years ago, a third or a half of your business was spinning up the hosted environment, posting the different maintenance updates and all that kind of stuff. That goes away with the cloud. Part of that value of the whole Mach thing is it's taken off and it's provided by the software and hosting providers, which means our agencies and our SIs have to focus on a different level of value. That idea of trusted advisor, the industry expert that comes in with a challenger seller mentality or a real prescriptive idea of to approach an industry. That's the value, and the successful players like Tim's company in this space come to the market with that. There are a whole lot of customer partners who are just around to pick up basically they're the cleaning and the maintenance people, and that business is gone. So you have to be forward thinking in order to survive and thrive in the Mach world.
Yeah, and to be clear, we were glad to see the back of that sort of work as well. It's not very fulfilling. It doesn't really add value. As I was saying earlier, you want the time that we spend with our clients, we want it to be time that they cherish. You don't cherish the time you spend with your cleaner. You cherish the time that you spend with your family and your partners and your friends and things like that, if you want to use that metaphor. And we want to be a trusted advisor, strategic partner, and just keeping software alive and support, making sure it doesn't go down on Black Friday and things like that. Those are not necessarily the interesting things that we can do to deliver the client. They're essential things that have to happen. But what you guys have done over the last decade or so is taken that problem away from us and given us the opportunity to be more strategic with our customers and to, secure ongoing revenue opportunities that are more value add to clients. We build better relationships. We have longer lasting clients, because quite often you'd find that at the end of a project, quite a lot of their budget was, as you were saying, just going into it's that time again. You're going out of support. We've got to upgrade you, and you can't do that really interesting new development or idea that you had over there, because we've got to spend 6 months going through this really complicated upgrade cycle. So, I don't miss those days at all, Christopher, to be honest.
I don't think anyone does.
Yeah.
Christopher, I have a question for you, and this is mostly because I consider you for today at least an expert in the whole technology ecosystem realm. This is the hat that I've kind of attributed to you on my own. Apologies if that's not the case or not. But I don't want us to go through the whole history of the ecosystems, but in your opinion, what do you think is the next step for the ecosystems? What is ecosystem 2.0, for example?
I think
coming?
ecosystem 2.0, I think, is going to build on this idea of the bundled. Again, we call them accelerators, but it isn't going to be point products and skilled people who do it. It's going to be more larger solutions, building on the idea there of fewer choices, but better fits. And I think it's going to gravitate to folks like Profound that are trusted advisors in the higher level strategy. The low margin maintenance work is gone. And so it will be clustered around natural groups of technology like the Mach Alliance, industry solutions that bundle things together. Now, whether it's a single catalog number that one vendor sells and it's, bill of materials, I don't know, what that'll look like. But in terms of, it will be going to the process manufacturing industry or the chemical industry and saying, this is the modernization play, boop, and it will have, small, medium, or large. It will have, either a geo or a very specific horizontal industry approach, and that'll be what I think is next. Until we get to quantum computing, which will be a revolution that changes everything that we're investing in now, but that's a long way away. But I think it's simply amping up the value add as a trusted advisor and the more strategic guidance. That would be my take. It's certainly what we're working on, and my approach with my ecosystem is to build towards that, because it's what the customers are telling us. You see all these things. Most customers have made a buy decision. 70% of customers have shortlisted or made a buy decision before they reach out to a company to talk to a sales rep. Well, that's huge in this industry. And what are they telling us? They want industry-specific solutions with people who know their industry and know what they're talking about. Customers have just told us what the next iteration of the ecosystems will be. It's on us to get there.
I was just going to say that I think that's kind of already happening, and agency partners are some, or maybe in the driver's position for that. A lot of them do have like preferred technologies that they want to work with. Obviously, they're open to working with others depending on the needs of the project, but at the same time, we have like these Shopify specialized agencies or commercetools specialized agencies or Netlify or so on. I mean, we already see the initial steps of taking ecosystem or transforming ecosystem 2.0 into reality and not just something that we aim for. Now, talking about ecosystems, I have a question for all of you, but I would like to start with Tim, because I know he has maybe an unpopular opinion about it. How do you guys feel about categorizing partnerships? And it doesn't really matter what do you want to call the level, if it's bronze, silver, gold, or premium, it doesn't really matter. Does it have an effect on the engagement? And Tim, as I was saying, I want to put you on the spotlight for the moment.
Wow. Throw me to the wolves. Hopefully it's not too controversial, but I think from an agency point of view around the levels of partnership, I think it's just from our perspective, if you're being compared in a competitive scenario against people that have got certain partnership levels, I think the clients really need to understand what it actually means if someone is, for instance, bronze, silver, or gold, because sometimes we're a fairly small boutique agency. We're probably never going to do as many projects as a global SI in a year, or do as much revenue. So if those are the metrics behind meeting those levels, then I think there's a bit of polarization that can occur there. So I think as long as it's really clear to the clients that are asking for a recommendation to a partner or researching what partners exist to help them with a problem as to what that actually means, then I think it's okay. I think from our perspective, I think it'd be nice to know that when these partnership kind of categorizations are being developed, that actually there's a way for you to be assessed on your merit, not just on your size or on your revenue or something like that, but actually, do you do good work? Do you get great feedback from clients? Are you retained a lot? Does your projects never get referred back to the vendors because things have gone wrong? Stuff like that are all really, I think, key performance indicators that should also be considered when classifying agencies. But I totally get why there needs to be that level of classification. I think it can really help inspire and motivate agencies to actually upskill and to learn more and get more people trained on it. But sometimes there's only a certain number of people that you have in your business that can get to those levels. So for an agency like us, the size of, we are about 40 people, we might never ever make it up to a level of someone like Accenture or someone like that, because it'd be impossible for us to do that in the short term.
Thank you very much for that. No, I wasn't trying to throw you under the bus, but I know that agencies probably have it more difficult because they don't really have their own categorization system. They usually fall within these systems. So that's why I wanted to have your answer first. Yeah. Chris, I want to hear your opinion on that because I know you also need to leave soon. So really interested to hear about what's your take on having these categories amongst partners. Does it benefit, or does it do anything else for the relationship that you have with that side and with
When you
the
say
partners as
category,
well?
it's also like that can also mean a lot of different things. Like you can categorize, sort of saying, "Hey, is this over in workflow, or is it commerce, or what?" So, what do you
No,
mean by the
just
category?
by level, as in, let's
Like
call
a
it
gold
maybe
or bronze
expertise.
tiering.
Yeah.
Oh, the tiering, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I do think that it makes sense to some extent, like because what you're saying. Let's say you have a vendor that have a tier with a preferred partner. What it does mean is that you know that those two have worked together closely. That means that there's case studies that you would expect to be there. That means that you're going to have to like assume that there's a working team there that knows how to use this, that has integrated with it before, and so on, right? So I think those kinds of tiers is more for what is the promise that it carries, or what does it imply for the end user. Now that doesn't, like, sometimes it's a little more sort of cynically commercially applied, right? Where it doesn't actually carry that guarantee in it, but if it's applied correctly, then it is an expression of, hey, these are two parties that have worked closely together, and that in turn will be better be able to cater you, right? I mean, I think that's the basic nature of it. So for me, like, tiered partnerships can make sense, right? I just think that you have to be very intentional around it, and very clear around it, right? What does it mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll pick up on that because I introduced a 3-tier program this year, and it does make a difference whether it's the ISV tech partner or whether it's the services partner, because our basic requirement is a certified technical integration between the third-party product and at least one of our microservice APIs. Whether you're registered select or premier, that is the same technological hook. So in that sense, my tiering is more of a marketing thing than anything else. But to Tim's point, on our SI side of the business and agencies, the different levels are level of skill, number of certified developers. So it's a capacity sizing. But you're right, three certified commercetools developers have the same skill set as 10, but the agency with 10 has capacity for more jobs or a larger job. And then again, it tends to be a marketing thing. They commit to a certain level of business development in exchange for a level of marketing or marketing development funds. So there are two ways to look at it. One is it, technical integration? Yes, it's a pass fail, yes, no. And is it a basic skill set? So the skills at Deloitte are exactly the same as the skills at Profound for the people who have the certifications. It's just Deloitte can put 500 people on a project, and Tim probably looks to put 5 or 10. But it has no bearing on the quality. So when you look at those, that's what I would say. And the agencies know how to position that, and it's their business. It's either we're a boutique quality player or we're a big main market player. So.
Yeah. And it's easy to have that conversation when you're originating the conversation. It's just sometimes when we've had situations in the past where we've been disqualified from opportunities because we haven't met a certain standard, and you don't get the opportunity to try and explain the nuance behind your partnership level and things like that. But I think you guys are much more clearer with regards to what it actually means to be in one of those tiers than perhaps other players in the historic marketplace.
Thank you. Thank you all for the answers. And I know Chris needs to leave us now. I only have a couple of questions, which I will gladly take on with Christopher and Tim. I'm sure that it's going to be a very big debate because I've saved, I think, some of the best ones, the more conflictual ones for the end of the conversation. So sorry, you will need to leave us, Chris. But
yeah, sorry to miss out on that. But yeah, it was a pleasure. I have an interview waiting, so I think it's just that the journalist is getting a little impatient. But I'm going to jump. Thank you so much for having me. Super interesting conversation. Looking forward to connecting with everyone here on the call again. And anyone that's interested in conversation, continuing the conversation outside, please hit me up on social, email, anything. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Thank you
Chris. Bye.
Being here, Chris. So my next conversation, which I would have addressed to everyone in the audience today, for all the attendees today, was how do you feel like when it comes to building integrations, who should do that? Should it be the technology solutions or should it be the agency? And Christopher, maybe you would want to go first on that.
Yeah, that is a controversial. So my answer to this is it depends. All right, I would tell you, I've been in an 11-person startup company years ago. No one knew who we were. If we wanted to build out an eco network, we had to do the work. So you know, all technology companies have someone in tech partnerships. They have a reference API or a data schema, and they say, "Hey guys, code to us and do it." So if you're not in a power or a strength position, you have to do it yourself, or you have to pay someone to do it. You know, I'm fortunate here. Actually, I have a dual nature here with our composable commerce. We're an established player, so people come to us and we can say, you need to code to us. We have a new front end product that is new in the marketplace. And so, you know, many of our ISVs are saying, we're going to wait for a little more common. Usually they say, we'll wait for a common customer and then we'll build it. So it's kind of a delay, you know, it's a show me. So, you know, I've been on both sides of this, and I think it's just pragmatic. If you're in obviously, if you're in a position where the other party will develop it at their expense, of course you say yes. I mean, that's the nature of the business. They see value in it. They're willing to make an investment. It shows skin in the game, a willingness to make an investment and work. But the flip side is, if you don't have that desirability or that pull in the marketplace, you have to do it yourself. You just have to, or you go out of business waiting for someone to come up with a common customer. So I think you just have to be pragmatic and accept the business reality. I
like that salesman answer that it depends. It was a very good one.
But it true.
Truly depends. Yeah. Tim, what's your opinion on it? Considering probably in most cases, a lot of the projects that you work on do require some sort of integration between all of the technologies that the customers want to bring in.
Yeah, I think the reality of what's certainly occurred over the last few years is that most of us who have been working in this space have been building our own integrations and trying to productize that to have some kind of, you know, ongoing value, whether that's acceleration in the next project or, you know, something that you can sell in as a bit of IP into a client or something like that. I think that's been going on, and that's nothing new. People have been doing that for forever in software projects. You always want to have your own kind of IP and your own way of doing stuff. But I think I would imagine that where the opportunity lies in this space now, in the Mac space, is that actually if there are common like solutions, like you were explaining earlier, Christopher, for certain verticals or certain sectors, that actually having pre-configured experiences that come out of the box that maybe is more authored by the vendors rather than by the agencies, that will be really helpful. You know, plumbing together you know, a pharmaceutical based kind of search and discovery with commerce and what have you, that comes out of the box doing 80% of what the SI would need to build. That creates a really compelling commercial proposition for agencies to go out there and sell. It's a bit different to actually saying, well, you can go headless, you can go Mac, but actually we've got to also invest a bit of time in building out the integrations that we need to do. And so before you actually see anything coming out of the sausage machine, we're going to have to do all of this integration work. I think that is the problem we need to solve there, is that time to value, right? And as I say, agencies have been investing in that in their, you know, off the back of projects they've been doing over the last few years already. And I see a situation where, you know, commercetools and Co are actually helping us in very specific areas to come with some of that pre-assembled kind of kit that we can save on some of the integration as well. But moving forward, I think it'd be very difficult to have like a whole suite of integrations just provided by the technology partners out there, because there's just going to be so much out there to integrate with. So I think it would have to be kind of grounded in commonality across projects.
Yeah, I've seen it a number of ways. So, you know, if you go out on our webpage for our partners, you'll see some, and it depends whether you're an agency SI or whether you're the ISV, because we have some agencies and SIs who have developed these connectors, and to Tim's point, they use them as proprietary IP. So It helps make their integrations quicker, more profitable, all of that. And they don't want to be in the business of being a software company. So they're glad to support their services as custom development, build, and all that. Then you have some who have no issues with being a software company. So they create these connectors, which they go out and they license for however much a year. And they have level 1, 2, 3 support desk. They're prepared to do, 12 by 5 or whatever support and act like a software company. And then, whereas many software companies I work with will create the connector and then they either distribute it as part of their license or they put it out in public domain because they don't want to deal with having to manage the services. They simply make it an enabling component out there. So a lot of it's your business model and what you're willing to do. And to Tim's point, the combination of an industry specific, and I tend to see clusters with our SIs. They kind of work with the same 1 or 2 CMS. They always choose one search provider. They always choose 1 or 2 payment services providers. So those clusters tend to have then these integrations led by an SI. So it's a turnkey. So there are various business models. This is part of the dynamicism in this space. And when I talk about, the competition is good because it drives innovation and drives options for our clients. This is one of those situations.
And the only other thing I'd add to this is I think it would be interesting to see how the next 3 or 4 years play out, where I think you're going to have a lot of mediation layers or integration layers that have been built by agencies and sold in to their clients as part of their IP value prop. But if that relationship with that agency or SI breaks down and they want to find a new partner to work with them, what are we going to do about the IP that exists in that middleware? Because the agency is not going to want to leave it behind, but the client still wants to work with a new agency to support it. So I think we're going to be having these conversations and these negotiations around where people have followed that model to license in something in the integration space. How do you extract that from a relationship if the client wants to move on to another partner?
Who gets custody of the children after the divorce,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
The other thing I've noticed, so I spent a lot of time in the middleware business 20 years ago, and there's a lot of old technology, 3-tier, point-to-point stuff. And I've noticed I've had 3 or 4 companies talk to me this year who have basically moved that one-to-many or many-to-one integration area. So the old enterprise service bus or, Gentran, B2B integrator, that kind of stuff. There are a few companies out there who basically push that up on the cloud to do a similar. It hasn't gotten quite the traction yet because many of the point-to-point integrations do everything you need because of the advancements in APIs and the value of Mach, which obviates some of that need. But it's still there, and it's mostly in the transitional space. So, net new applications are easy because there's lots of choices in the cloud world. But if I've got a large, any of the big 3 middlewares in the background, if I'm trying to modernize that and bring it forward, there's a lot of, transitional stuff. I use my example on organic food. If you're a transitional farm, it takes you several years to get clean enough to be organic. And I think we're seeing that. So I don't think the market's made up their mind there. But 20 years ago, there were a lot of point-to-point or one-to-many standalone connection integration software companies that are out there. You don't see that yet in the cloud space.
Thank you both for that debate on what approach should someone have around integration. And because we've kind of extended our stay, I will just ask you both the last question that I prepared for today. So we've talked a lot about ecosystems. We talked about the Mac Alliance, but I would say that at the core of it, or what's driving all of this, are our customers. So let's say that you've already won the deal with the customer. What's next? How do you actually manage to win their heart? And Tim, I would want you to go first for this last question.
It seems pretty obvious to me, but yeah, I'll tell you what we try and do. So, we'll spend time building a partnership with our clients before we start the project. So we've got to build that relationship, build that trust, get to know them, get to know their challenges and their pain points, and help them feel confident that we're going to help them overcome those things and deliver success. And then secondly, we have to make sure that our team in the agency understands the problems that have to be solved. So we don't want to have that concept of A team and B team going into a client there. We've got to make sure that whoever's done the discovery and the initial engagement hangs around on the project and make sure that the rest of the team that does the delivery understands the client well and can carry on building building on that great relationship that's already been formed. And then a final few things, you basically always have to deliver on your promises and don't promise things you can't do. Help the customer to adapt and grow. In this space, this is probably going to be the first project that they've done with Mac technology, and things have to be a little bit different in the clients' businesses. So you have to help them understand what they need to change, how they can change, and what the opportunities are for modernisation there. And you can't just leave them to that. You've got to take them on that journey. And then finally, if you just have to make your stakeholders and your project team look successful. And if you can do that, you've won their hearts, I would say.
And I'll second everything Tim says, and I'll throw it to the one sentence I use. Exceed their expectations with regards to time to value. It's as simple as that. It's all of the concepts that Tim's talked about. But if the customer doesn't get up and using that software, we've all wasted our time and effort. It becomes shelfware. You don't get the renewal. The customer, more importantly, doesn't get the value. And so focusing everyone on getting the customer's time to value, the shortest reasonable period, is probably the single best thing for everyone involved. The customer gets the satisfaction in the use. We as businesses deliver our value promise, which allows us to remain, suppliers and trusted advisors to our end clients. So,
gentlemen, it has been a pleasure to discuss with you today, and thank you for being so patient and answering all my questions. I do appreciate you taking the time and having us, helping us with organizing the event today. Hopefully it's going to be the first one of many that we will do together. With Tim, I know we already did something quite recent, but with you, Chris, this is like an open invitation.
I always say yes to dinner invitations. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again. I see that we do not have questions from the audience. So with that, enjoy the rest of the evening, go back to your families, and I will pass back the mic to Anna and Selena.
Thanks, Alin. Good to see you, Chris.
Same here.